Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum, dear students. Welcome back to your class of histology with your tutor Dr. Shehla Aman. And today we are going to discuss with the histology of the uterus. Uterus is a hollow pear-shaped organ. Its weight is about 30 to 40 gram and it measures 7.5 into 5 into 2.5 centimeter. It has a body which is upper part and a lower barrel-shaped area which is called cervix. It is attached to the ovaries via uterine tubes, and the area of the uterus which is above the attachment of the uterine tube is called the fundus. So histologically, the wall of the uterus consists of the three layers. These layers are the endometrium, myometrium, and serosa or adventitia, also called the perimetrium. So in this diagram, you can appreciate this one is the endometrium, which is the inner lining of the uterine wall, and then is the myometrium, and outer to myometrium is the perimetrium. In the histological section, you can also appreciate this is the endometrium, and this area is the myometrium. So what is endometrium? This is the simple epithelium along with the lamina propria. So epithelium is simple columnar in nature. It has both ciliated cells as well as the secretory cells, and beneath epithelium there is the lamina propria, which is a loose connective tissue which is rich in fibroblast and the reticular fibers. Uterine glands are also present in this part, and these uterine glands are simple tubular in nature, and the microscopic structure of the endometrium changes during each menstrual cycle. So endometrium consists of the two layers or the zones. The upper part is called the functionalis and stratum functionalis, and lower part is called the stratum basal or stratum basalis. So stratum functionalis is thick superficial layer. It contains the surface epithelium and the straight tubular gland whose structures vary according to the time of the cycle, and also the blood vessels. It has a rich capillary network formed by the coiled arteries, and this is the layer which is actually sloughed at menstruation. Below this layer is the stratum basal. Stratum basal is deep, narrow. It has lamina propria as well as the glands, and the blood vessels supplying this area are the straight arteries. This is the part of the endometrium which is retained after menstruation, and from this part whole of the stratum functional regenerate in after every menstrual cycle. So what is the blood supply? This is also very important. Main blood supply to the uterus is the uterine artery. It gives off many arcuate arteries. Arcuate arteries then anastomose with each other and then give rise to the radial arteries. Then these radial artery further divide into two branches. The one is the smaller straight arteries which supplies the stratum basal of the endometrium, and other is the coiled artery which supplies the stratum functional. So myometrium of the uterus is a thick layer of the uterus. It is composed of basically three layers. The inner is the longitudinal layer, middle is the circularly arranged smooth muscle fibers, and outer is again the longitudinally arranged smooth muscle cells. The middle layer of the myometrium contains a larger blood vessel. That's why it is also called the stratum vasculare, and the layer which is above it and near to the mucosa is also called the stratum subvasculare, and the submucosal layer of the myometrium, which contains mostly the circularly arranged longitudinal arranged fibers, and some oblique fibers may also be present in this layer. And the layer which is superficial to the stratum vasculare is called stratum supravasculare, and it also contains a longitudinally arranged smooth muscle cells. The very important point is that the size and number of these muscle cells vary according to the level of the estrogen. So in pregnancy, there is both hyperplasia as well as hypertrophy of the smooth muscle cells. So what are the changes with each menstrual cycle? You can appreciate from this diagram that this is the menstrual phase of the menstrual cycle, where there is a sloughing, and then the proliferative phase started. In this proliferative phase, as the endometrium grows, there is also development of the primary follicle into secondary and mature follicle, which releases the estrogen, and this estrogen is the main factor which causes proliferation proliferation of the endometrium. At the time of the mid-cycle, there is ovulation under effect of the hormone LH, and because of ovulation, corpus luteum is released, and this corpus luteum release secretes both progesterone and estrogen, and this causes the secretory changes in the endometrium. So this phase of the endometrial cycle is called secretory or progestational or post-ovulatory phase. After this phase, if the pregnancy does not occur, the corpus luteum degenerates and corpus albicans forms, and there is the withdrawal of the hormone, which leads to the menstrual flow. So total duration of the cycle is nearly 28 days. We will discuss each of the phase separately. First is the proliferative phase, and this phase starts from the day 5 up to the day 14 after the menstrual phase. It coincides with the ovarian follicular development under effect of estrogen hormone. There is a regeneration of the endometrium till day 14. It is fully restored and it reaches up to a maximum of height of 1 to 6 millimeter. The surface epithelium is restored. Lamina propria again is formed. It is highly cellular. It is loose connective tissue. It contains large number of the lymphocytes and other connective tissue cells, and also the coiled arteries are present. The uterine glands in this phase are simple tubular in nature. They are lined by the simple columnar epithelium with a mixture of both ciliated cells and the secretory cells, and these glands have a narrow lumina at this phase of the menstrual cycle. So this is another histological diagram, which is an H&E stained section of the uterine endometrium in the proliferative phase. Here you can see the intact epithelium. This epithelium invaginates inside to form the uterine glands, and these uterine glands are the straight tubular glands in the proliferative phase. This is the stroma or the lamina propria of the endometrium, which is highly cellular at this stage, and this whole area of endometrium is called the stratum functionale, and below this area is the stratum basale. So what happens in the secretory phase, that which begins after ovulation from the day 15 till day 28, and it depends upon the corpus luteum, which secretes the progesterone hormone. So endometrium in this phase become edematous, and it reaches up to a thickness of maximum of 5 to 6 millimeter. The uterine glands in this phase are coiled and branched and having a sacculated appearance and corkscrew shape, and their lumina is sacculated as well. There is accumulation of the glycogen in the cells of the stroma, and the dilated lumen of the gland is also present. So at this stage, actually the secretory changes prepare this endometrium to receive the zygote for implantation. So this is H&E stain section of the slide in the secretory phase of endometrium. Here you can see the intact epithelium, the invagination of the epithelium forming the gland. These are all the glands which are corkscrew shaped, having wider lumina, which is sacculated. This whole area of the endometrium is the stratum functionale, and this area is the stratum basale. You can also appreciate little bit smaller arteries present over here, which are the branches of the coiled arteries. This is an enlarged magnification of the uterine endometrium in secretory phase. Here you can see the gland, which is sacculated with the sacculated lumen and corkscrew shape, lined by simple columnar epithelium, which is partly ciliated and partly secretory in nature. Also highly edematous stroma, which is highly cellular in nature, as well as the large number of the blood vessels. These are different sections of the coiled arteries, and in the inside you can appreciate the epithelium of the gland, which is simple columnar in nature. So next phase is the menstrual phase. It lasts for 1 to 4 days, and if there is no fertilization, then the corpus luteum degenerates and there is a drop in the estrogen and progesterone hormones. So because of this drop, there are the periods of the ischemia and necrosis because of vasoconstriction of the coiled artery in the stratum functionale. So there are larger periods of the vasoconstriction in the coil artery, which leads to periods of ischemia, and periods of necrosis leads to sloughing of the surface layer as well as sloughing of the upper part of the glands in the stratum functionale, as well as the blood vessels, leads to the hemorrhage in this area. So there is a rupture of the arteries leading to hemorrhage, shedding of the functional layer, but the basal layer remains viable and it restores the functional layer. And this is because of the reason, because basal layer is supplied by the straight arteries and stratum functionale is supplied by the coiled arteries, and these coiled arteries actually show the response in show changes in response to withdrawal of the estrogen, which are vasoconstrictive responses leading to ischemia of the menstrual phase. So these are the three histological pictures in three different phases of the menstrual cycle. This one is the menstrual phase, in which you can appreciate the epithelium is not present. There is edematous stroma with the bleeding in the stroma, and only the stratum basale is present. In this diagram, this is the proliferative phase, in which you can appreciate that the epithelium is now intact and the simple tubular glands are present. And in this phase, the secretory phase, you can appreciate that the glands are now corkscrew shape. They have sacculated wide lumina and their stroma is edematous, and it contains its cells contain large number of the glycogen, and this stroma is highly cellular, so it is ready to accept the embryo for implantation. So these are the different phases of the menstrual cycle, and here we end the today's lecture. These are the references, that is Histology, a text and atlas by Michael H. Ross. So thank you for your attention. Till the next lecture, we will meet in the next class, inshallah. Till then, Allah Hafiz.